Hi, I'm the Space Quest historian. We're up to our 4th episode of the Space Quest Primers. Everything you need to know about the Space Quest games in easily digestible chunks. The 4th game is called Roger Wilco and the Time Rippers, and as the title suggests, it deals with time travel, but not in the way you'd expect. So, at the start of the game, Roger is still on his way back to his home planet in the Aluminum Mallard, a ship he rescued from a junk freighter at the start of the last game. He stops off at a seedy spaceport bar to bore some aliens to death when he's accosted by this menacing-looking Daft Punk lookalike. He's taken outside and shown a hologram of his old nemesis, Sludge Volhall from Space Quest II, who tells him that he's getting really fed up with being thwarted at every turn by some low-life janitor, and he tells his daft Nazi troopers here, they're called the Sequel Police, to put a bullet in your head. But before they can do so, they're taken down by these two dudes with giant guns. The guns shoot time rips, and the dude tells Roger to jump into the time rip before it's too late, so okay, sure thing. You end up on the war-torn, bomb-to-shit streets of your home planet Xenon. It's clearly sometime in the future, but here's the clever bit. Instead of traveling in years, you're actually traveling in sequels. So now you've ended up in Space Quest XII, Volhall's Revenge 2, and it's not a happy place, although I'm sure this guy could probably just use a hug. You head off into the sewer to find another hologram, this time of a man called Professor Lloyd, who says he's the leader of the Rebels. The giant supercomputer that controlled every facet of the planet got infected with a virus, and this virus seems to have it in for you, going so far as to inventing time travel just so it can go back and kill you in the past. Why it couldn't just kill you in this time period is something that's briefly brought up, but never explained at the end of the game. And why this dude with the time gun would send you here, of all places, is never explained at all. I guess he just expected you to waltz up to the supercomputer and unplug it? So, okay, that's what we do. We stow away on this patrol ship and head up to the supercomputer, but wouldn't you know it, the door to the inside is locked. So, instead we hijack one of the bad guys' time pods and punch in some random digits. This brings us to Space Quest X, Latex Babes of Estros, a not-so-subtle nod to the old Infocom adventure game Leather Goddesses of Phobos. And furthermore, these two, future sequels are actually sort of a subtle jab at the increasing burnout that the designers were facing, because at the time the two guys considered Space Quest IV to be the last game in the series, and these future sequels were meant as a way of saying, look, this is the sort of washed-up trash you're gonna get if they keep forcing us to do more sequels. And then 2 more games in the series followed. But anyway, back on track. After joyriding with a pterodactyl, trust me, Roger is taken prisoner by the titular Latex Babes. Apparently their leader, Zondra, doesn't think too highly of Roger, although this Roger, of course, has no idea what she's on about. Back at their lair, the Latex Babes intend on torturing him by shaving his legs with the EpiRip 357, the most powerful hand hair remover in the universe. But they're interrupted by the roar of a sea slug. Roger dispatches the sea slug with items that the Latex Babes already had handy, but for some reason this is seen as incredibly heroic of him, and suddenly everyone's off to celebrate by going shopping at the nearby mall. Wait, what? Meanwhile, in a cutscene, it's revealed that the dude who threw you into the time warp was in fact your future son, Roger Jr. Haha, bummer. Anyway, at the mall, Roger faffs about for a bit, does the usual things you do at a mall, buy clothes, buy some other clothes, get a job at the local burger joint, get fired from that same burger joint, before the Sequel Police arrive to mess up your day. The only way to escape them is to go through the middle of the mall, which is this giant zero-gravity skating rink. Now, when you hear people complain that Space Quest IV is such a hard game, this is usually the sequence they're talking about. Back in the day, if you were playing the CD-ROM version of this game and your computer was just a little bit on the fast side, this sequence was impossible. And the reason for that is, the faster your computer was, the faster the in-game timer would run out, so the Sequel Police dudes would start appearing way before they were supposed to, rendering the whole sequence either very, very, very difficult, or just flat out impossible. Don't worry, these days you can just play it in ScumVM and they've fixed all these issues. Anyway, you steal the Sequel Policeman's time pod and head to your next destination. You piece together a time code from a scrap of paper you found on this dead Sequel Policeman, and a clue you found in an old Space Quest IV hint book in the software store. Yeah. You punch in this code, and it takes you all the way back to Space Quest I. And here you cause a disturbance for having too many colors in your palette. Yes, these monochrome bikers actually pick a fight with you because you're in 256 colors, and in retaliation you knock over their bikes, Yeah, look, it's not Roger's proudest moment. Anyway, all that for a book of matches. And now, we finally have everything we need to defeat the evil supercomputer back in Space Quest 12. I know, it seems like we got nothing done, but we actually have. The lock on the supercomputer door? Well, we just melt that away with a bit of acid we picked up in the sewers. These invisible lasers in the corridors, we just turned those visible using the cigars our former burger boss threw at us when he fired us, lighting it with this book of matches we backed from the Yulin Flats bar. These robots patrolling the catwalks of the supercomputer, though, yeah, those can be annoying. What you can do is pick up this laptop in the ruined city, look at this terminal plug in the supercomputer, then go all the way back to the mall and buy a matching plug for your laptop. And then once you plug that in, you get this cool, ominous message from Sludge Vohal.
Take a good look, Roger. Remember this poor, wretched soul, for he is your son.
Which was even voiced in the disc version. Check it out.
Take a good look, Roger. Remember this poor, wretched soul, for he is your son.
And then it shows you the location of each of the killer droids. Or you can just go up here, go down the stairs, wait for this droid to move halfway across the screen, then go back up and make your way to the control room. From here, you start the formatting process that will wipe out all of the supercomputer. You make your way to the inner sanctum, have a bit of a scuffle with Sludge, who's taken over your son's body, and then you put Junior's mind back into his body, and whoop-dee, game's over. Junior drops some enigmatic hints about his mother, Roger's future wife, and then shoves Dad back into the time rip. And that's where the Space Quest saga was supposed to have ended. Space Quest 4 was a masterpiece of meta humor, brutal design, and a technical marvel for its time. And the fully voiced CD-ROM version even featured absolutely pitch-perfect narration from Gary Owens.
You're not sure what it is, but you bet it would look cool spewing through the propellers.
After it was complete, the two guys from Andromeda split up and went their separate ways. Scott Murphy stayed in Oakhurst, California, while Mark Crowe moved to Eugene, Oregon to raise a family and work at Sierra's sister company, Dynamics. But it didn't take long before Sierra decided they wanted more Space Quest, and if the two guys weren't going to do one together, then maybe just having one of them do it would be good enough. And so, 2 years after Space Quest 4, in 1993, we got Space Quest 5, The Next Mutation. Stick around for that, and in the meantime, I'll
see ya on the Chrono Stream, Time Jockey.
Hey, that's my line. No, wait, it's actually yours. Carry on.